When we talk about the worst gaming publishers in the modern day gaming industry, we usually talk about the heaviest hitters in the market currently. You know, EA, Ubisoft, Activision, Blizzard, etc. The usual suspects that come up during these conversations. But this time, I want to include another contender to that list of awful publishers that people should also keep an eye out on like the plague, and that is WB Games. In my opinion, this company is one of the worst gaming publishers out there, and I don't think they get mentioned nearly enough when people talk about bad video game corporations. Having a game being published by WB is probably one of the worst fates you can wish for any video game, period. They are everything that is wrong with modern video games, and they are just as scummy as any other AAA publisher on the market. They are greedy, out of touch, and frankly, horribly mismanaged. But because these guys don't produce games as often as their competitors, they're not really included all too much in conversations. However, with the events that happened so far in 2025, I think that it's really illuminated just how utter garbage WB is at handling live service games, and how anything else that they touch will have a high probability of being ruined sooner or later. Now obviously that doesn't mean that they don't have some wins under their belt. The Batman Arkham series is goated and is considered to be one of the best superhero games of all time. The Shadow of Mordor games were awesome with their innovative Nemesis system. And Hogwarts Legacy is probably one of the best adaptations of the Harry Potter universe ever seen in a video game. However, like most games published under greedy AAA corporations, these titles are good despite being published by them, not because of them. And I feel this is becoming more and more true for WB games in particular, because they recently just had not one, but 2 live service games that they had to abandon this year alone. The first game is Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, a game that I've already covered extensively on this channel over a year ago when it first came out, and I just did an update video not too long ago to see how I was faring over a year later, and to no one's surprise, it's not doing so hot. I mean, how could anyone expect anything else? This was the predictable outcome because everybody knew that this game was cooked from the beginning. The writing was on the wall with this one. It took some of the most tired, overdone gaming tropes that currently infest the live service genre and put them all into one package, and it didn't even do them well. This was one of the saddest titles that was released in 2024 just from a conceptual level alone. Like, who at the executive office thought that a live service looter shooter based off of the Suicide Squad IP was ever a good idea? And not only that, but the execution of the whole game was just so poorly done to the point where it felt like this was an indie studio developing their first game and not Rocksteady themselves. First of all, the game only had a handful of the same few mission types that they cycled throughout the entire game, which made the title incredibly repetitive. Not to mention that it felt like the enemy variety was even less than the mission variety itself. The entire game, you were killing the same 5 enemies while running through the same 3 mission types while receiving the same 10 guns as loot drops. It felt extremely repetitive the whole way through, and it didn't help that there is hardly any content in the game at all. Once you got through the campaign, you'll be met with a very lethargic endgame where you literally run the same missions over and over again on higher difficulties until you unlock the Brainiac boss fight, which is pretty much just one of the story boss fights recycled and repackaged as a big boss fight for the season. And that was pretty much all the game had to offer. You just ran the exact same missions ad nauseum for a chance to get the exact same loot, but with slightly better numbers. Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League was WB's $200 million attempt at chasing after the live service looter shooter trend, and it failed horribly. This title was marketed as this next-gen AAA gaming experience starring our favorite DC superheroes and villains, but instead we just got a half-baked, underdeveloped, and generic game that barely had about 10 hours of actual content, which was then sold to us as a $60 premium title from a studio that has never done a live service before. This was so poorly planned on a foundational level, and the end result was that it was completely abandoned only a year after launch, and it killed any and all goodwill that Rocksteady had been painstakingly building for the past decade. What an absolute embarrassment. Now, the next game I want to talk about has got to be one of WB's biggest failures. I'm talking about one of the most generational fumbles of all time. Like, this game was supposed to be a slam dunk for WB, but they somehow still managed to screw it up not once, but twice. I'm talking about MultiVersus because it was just announced not too long ago that they will no longer be supporting the game anymore due to it not being profitable enough. And man, what an absolute shame because this title had so much potential to be great. I think out of all the platform fighters out there, this one had the best chance to be a decent competitor to Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Its concept was really solid. I mean, who wouldn't want to play as Ultra Instinct Shaggy teaming up with Batman, fighting against Jake the Dog and LeBron James? That just sounds incredibly fun from a conceptual standpoint alone. And the audience support for this game was overwhelmingly positive as well ever since the first reveal trailer dropped over 3 years ago. So what happened between then and now? Why is the game all of a sudden being abandoned if everybody seemingly loved it? Well, it's because MultiVersus was so horribly mismanaged and riddled with so many anti-consumer systems that made players bounce off the game very quickly. A major reason for that is because it had one of the worst monetization business practices possible for a live service game. One of the biggest problems MultiVersus had was that they locked many of the heroes behind a paywall. If you didn't want to pay for those characters, then you had to go through an excruciatingly painful progression system that forced you to grind dozens of hours just to unlock one character, which put a lot of new players off from the game. I get that it's a free-to-play title and that the devs need to make their money somehow, but there are better ways to monetize your game other than locking major gameplay elements behind either a paywall or a massive grind. It was very obvious that WB wanted to nickel and dime the players at every possible turn, and the game paid very dearly for it, not once, but twice, because during the beta they had to take the game down for a whole year, which pretty much killed all momentum for the game. Now, that wasn't the only thing that led to the downfall of MultiVersus. There were many other factors that caused people to bounce off the game, like poor character balancing, awful online netcode, a lack of side content, and progression being painfully slow. Now, I don't want to pin all of the blame solely on WB Games for this failure because I think a large portion of the blame should probably go to the development studio as well. It was just a constant barrage of terrible game design choices after another that I don't think WB really had that much influence in. Like, I don't think it was their decision to put Banana Guard into the game instead of like Ben 10 or some other fan favorite character. It's just really unfortunate that with all these variables put together, it caused the game to crash and burn not once, but twice. And it's really disappointing because this game actually had a lot of potential too, but I guess a second chance wasn't enough for the studio to save MultiVersus. With all of that being said, before I end off this video, I'd like to give an honorable mention to that one time the devs for Shadows of Mordor literally created one of the most innovative gameplay systems ever in video game history, the Nemesis system, which could have paved the way to inspire other video games with their own version, which could have led to even more innovation for the gaming industry as a whole. However, WB just couldn't bear the thought of other studios taking inspiration from them because that would mean that they would have to give something of theirs for free, and they can't let that slide. So they literally patented an entire gameplay mechanic just so nobody else would be able to use it in their games. How petty do you have to be to go to the official US legal court system and spend tens of thousands of dollars in legal fees to file a patent on your video game mechanic so that no one else can use it? And the worst part about it was that it was accepted, so that's why we haven't been able to see that system in any other title since then. But I mean, at least WB is the only company that's ever tried to file a patent on a video game system. I'm sure no one else is gonna try to do that, right? Anyways, that's why I believe WB Games should be on the same level as Ubisoft, EA, and Activision in terms of scummy publishers, because there really is no limit to their corporate greed. Now, some people may say that they sometimes put out pretty good games once in a blue moon, and I mean, sure, I'll give you that. However, Ubisoft also puts out pretty good games once in a while, so does that mean they're still good? You tell me. Anyways, what do you think? Do you agree or disagree? Let me know down below and make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more content in the future. See ya.